Welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be exploring, something that I think we all grapple with, and that is the concept of ego. But we're looking at it specifically from the perspective of autistic individuals.
Well, absolutely.
You've shared some really fascinating material, mainly from cheap ABA, autism and ego, navigating self-concept and identity.
Yes.
I'm very curious to see what insights we uncover as we go through
It's
this.
a really rich topic. I think even breaking down what ego is can be tricky.
Yeah, it's one of those words like
Yeah.
we throw around, but have we really sat and
Right.
looked at it?
Exactly. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's that part of us that forms our self-image, our sense of,
Right.
it's how we perceive ourselves and interact with the world. But psychologists have been debating the nature of ego for decades. Some see it as the core of our identity,
Right.
while others view it more as a mediator between our primal urges and what society expects of us.
So it's almost like trying to balance those internal needs
Yes.
with those external pressures.
Mm.
And I imagine that balancing act gets even more complicated for autistic individuals
Absolutely.
when they're in a world that doesn't always feel designed for them.
That's a key insight that the source material highlights. The autistic experience, with its heightened sensory sensitivities, different ways of processing social cues, and unique ways of thinking and learning, can lead to a sense of being other.
And so that feeling of not quite fitting in must have a pretty profound impact
Yes.
on how someone views themselves.
Hmm.
And it makes me think about what the source said about a potentially more fragile ego in autistic individuals.
Right. It's like their sense of self can be more easily shaken because they're already navigating a world that doesn't always understand or accommodate their differences. They might be particularly vulnerable to criticism or rejection simply because they're starting from a place of feeling different.
But isn't it interesting how the source also points to the potential for a very strong sense of self-worth
Yeah.
in autistic individuals?
Yeah.
How do those two seemingly opposite ideas exist within the same community?
I think that's the beautiful complexity of the spectrum. There is no single autistic experience.
Right.
While some individuals might struggle with a more fragile ego, others might derive incredible strength from their unique talents and perspectives. Think of autistic individuals who excel in areas like math, music, or art.
Right.
Those abilities can be a real source of pride and contribute to a solid sense of self.
So it's not about making these generalizations,
Yeah.
but rather recognizing that the way ego develops in autistic individuals is very diverse
Yes.
and influenced by so many different factors.
Dude, exactly.
And speaking of influential factors, I'm really curious to delve into this concept of masking
Yeah.
that the source material emphasizes.
Yes.
It feels like such a crucial piece of the puzzle when we're talking about autism and ego.
It absolutely is. And this is where things get really interesting. Masking is essentially the act of consciously or subconsciously suppressing autistic traits to fit in with neurotypical expectations. Imagine constantly having to monitor and adjust your behavior, your communication style, even your body language, just to appear normal. It's exhausting, to say the least.
Wow, that just sounds incredibly draining, like you're constantly on,
Yeah,
never able to relax and be yourself.
right.
I can only imagine the toll it takes on someone's
Over time.
against itself over time.
Exactly. The source material dives into the potential consequences of masking on self-esteem and authenticity. You're essentially living a partial life, hiding parts of who you truly are. And that can lead to feelings of inauthenticity, internal conflict, and even shame about your true self.
It's heartbreaking to think about someone feeling ashamed of who they are at their core.
Yes.
I'm curious if the source provided any real-life examples of how this
Yeah.
might play out.
Yeah, there's an anecdote about an autistic individual who masked extensively throughout their life. They achieved remarkable success academically and professionally, but they felt like they were always performing, never able to truly be themselves. And ultimately, it led to severe burnout and a deep sense of emptiness.
That's a powerful story.
Yeah.
And it really illustrates how masking, while sometimes necessary for navigating a world that doesn't always understand or accept differences, can ultimately prevent us from living authentically and tapping into our true potential.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, how do you even begin to undo years of masking and rebuild a healthy ego?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, and one we're going to explore as we continue this deep dive.
Okay.
We'll look at self-compassion, authentic self-expression, and finding ways to embrace those unique strengths and challenges that come with being autistic.
I'm ready to dive in. This has already given me a lot to think about.
Right.
So we've talked about the challenges, but I'm really eager to explore those solutions you mentioned.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin to undo the effects of masking and foster a healthier sense of self?
Well, the source material emphasizes that it's a journey, not a quick fix.
Right.
And it starts with something I think we could all use more of, which is self-compassion.
Ooh, self-compassion. That feels especially important given how harshly autistic individuals might judge themselves,
Absolutely.
especially if they've internalized those societal messages about, needing to fit in.
You're spot on. It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you'd offer a close friend
Right.
who's struggling. It means challenging those negative self-beliefs and replacing them with self-acceptance. And it's not just a vague idea. There are actual practices that can help.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Yeah.
What are some concrete ways to cultivate self-compassion?
One powerful technique is practicing gratitude. Taking time each day to acknowledge the good things in your life, even seemingly small ones, can shift your focus away from self-criticism and toward appreciation.
I can see how that would be helpful. It's like training your mind to see the positive instead of getting stuck in that negative loop.
Exactly. And another technique is engaging in positive self-talk. Instead of berating yourself for mistakes,
Right.
try speaking to yourself with kindness and encouragement, just as you would to a friend.
So it's about being your own cheerleader instead of your own worst critic.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. But what about external validation? Doesn't that play a role in building a healthy ego?
It certainly can, but the source material emphasizes that true self-worth comes from within.
Right.
And one of the best ways to tap into that inner strength is through authentic self-expression.
Now, that sounds liberating.
Yeah.
Tell me more about what that looks like in practice.
It's about finding outlets where you can be your true self without the pressure of masking.
Okay.
It could be anything creative: art, music, writing, dance, even building with Legos.
Sure.
The point is to find something that lets you express yourself freely and connect with your passions.
This reminds me of time when I felt really pressured to conform to certain expectations.
Yeah.
And how I eventually found solace in writing. It became a way for me to process my emotions and express myself authentically.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly empowering.
That's a perfect example of how authentic self-expression can be a powerful tool for building self-esteem and tapping into your true potential. But of course, there will be times when you can't avoid masking,
Right.
like in certain social or work situations. So what do you do then?
That's a good question. It feels like there needs to be a way to navigate those situations without completely losing yourself in the process.
And the source material introduces mindfulness as a key strategy for managing those moments
Okay.
when masking feels unavoidable.
I've heard a lot about mindfulness, but I'm curious to hear how it specifically applies to this context.
Mindfulness is about cultivating a heightened awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and sensations in the present moment. By practicing mindfulness, you can start to recognize when you're masking, understand the triggers that lead to it, and make more conscious choices about how you want to respond in those situations.
So instead of masking on autopilot,
Yes.
you're becoming more aware of why and when you're doing it,
Exactly.
which gives you more control over the situation.
It's about making intentional choices rather than simply reacting out of habit or social pressure.
Right.
And sometimes taking back control means recognizing when you need support. The source material highlights the importance of connecting with other autistic individuals and mental health professionals who understand the unique challenges you're facing.
It's like building a support system where you feel seen, heard, and understood for who you truly are.
Precisely. It takes a village, as they say.
Mm.
And finally, the source offers one more crucial piece of advice for building a healthy ego. Set realistic expectations.
I think that's something we can all benefit from, regardless of whether we're autistic or not.
Absolutely.
Striving for perfection can be so draining and ultimately self-defeating.
Couldn't agree more. It's about celebrating your wins, big and small, and acknowledging that growth is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's about moving away from perfectionism and embracing progress over perfection. And this applies to unmasking as well.
Okay.
It's not about instantly erasing all those deeply ingrained habits, but rather about making gradual progress toward a more authentic way of being.
So to recap, we have self-compassion, authentic self-expression,
Yes.
mindfulness, seeking support, and setting realistic expectations. That's quite a toolbox for building a healthy ego.
It is. And if we had to choose one key takeaway from all this, I think it would be this. Self-acceptance is the foundation of a healthy ego. It's about recognizing and appreciating the unique strengths and challenges that come with being autistic and building a sense of self rooted in authenticity and compassion.
Beautifully said. And I think that message extends beyond the individual. It challenges us as a society to create environments that support autistic individuals in developing a strong and healthy sense of self.
Now you're talking. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really raises an important question about the environments we create both individually and as a society. How can we foster spaces where autistic individuals feel safe to be their authentic selves without the pressure to mask? It's about moving away from this idea of a one-size-fits-all approach to social interaction and embracing neurodiversity as a strength, not a deficit.
You've hit on such a crucial point. And while creating a more inclusive world might seem like a daunting task, I truly believe that small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. It starts with education and awareness. The more we understand about the autistic experience, the better equipped we'll be to create inclusive environments.
So what might those inclusive environments look like? Where do we even begin?
It could be simple things like providing sensory-friendly spaces, offering clear and concise communication, and being patient and understanding when someone might need a little extra time to process information or express themselves. And it's not just about physical spaces, right?
Right.
It's also about fostering a culture of acceptance and understanding in our workplaces, schools, and communities.
You're so right. It's about challenging those ingrained societal biases that view autistic traits as something to be fixed or cured. Instead, we need to celebrate neurodiversity and recognize the unique contributions that autistic individuals bring to the table.
And imagine the impact that would have on someone's self-esteem if they felt genuinely accepted and valued for who they are, neurodiversity and all. It could be transformative. When autistic individuals feel safe and supported to be themselves, they can truly shine. They can bring their unique talents, perspectives, and creativity to the world in ways that benefit us all.
This deep dive has really been an eye-opening experience. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on autism and ego, and I'm left with a sense of hope and possibility. But before we wrap up, I want to touch on one final thought from the source material that really resonated with me. Fostering a healthy ego in autistic individuals is not just about individual well-being, but also about unlocking their full potential. It's about creating a world where autistic individuals don't just survive, but thrive. It's like we've been talking about, this individual growth on a personal level,
Yeah.
but then zooming out and seeing how that can be mirrored on a societal level.
It is fascinating, isn't it? We've unpacked how self-compassion, authentic self-expression, and mindful awareness are key for an individual, and those same principles can guide us toward a more inclusive world.
So instead of asking an autistic person to change who they are,
Right.
we change the environment to be more accepting of who they already are.
Exactly. Think about it. A sensory-friendly space isn't just about reducing noise or light. It's saying, your sensory experience is valid. We've made room for it.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, what are some other ways that we can challenge these outdated views of autism as something to be fixed?
Well, one way is to highlight the incredible strengths and talents that autistic individuals bring to the table.
Yeah.
We often focus on the challenges, but what about the amazing contributions in fields like technology,
Yeah.
the arts, and activism?
It's like we need to reframe the narrative,
Yes.
showcasing those success stories, not just focusing on the deficit.
I couldn't agree more. And part of that reframing is about language. Instead of talking about high functioning versus low functioning, which can be incredibly limiting,
Yeah.
we can focus on individual strengths and support needs.
Right. It's about recognizing that each person on the spectrum is unique
Yes.
with their own set of challenges and abilities,
Exactly.
and that there's no one-size-fits-all approach
Right.
to support or understanding.
Absolutely. It's about creating a world where autistic individuals feel empowered to embrace their authentic selves and contribute their unique gifts. A world where differences are celebrated, not stigmatized.
This deep dive has really been a journey of discovery. We started by exploring the complex relationship between autism and ego, delving into the challenges of a world that often feels mismatched to the autistic experience. But then we shifted gears, didn't we? We explored a toolbox of strategies for building a healthy sense of self strategies that empower autistic individuals to thrive in a world that doesn't always understand them.
And ultimately, it's about fostering a sense of belonging, both for individuals and for the autistic community as a whole. It's about creating a world where everyone feels safe to be themselves, neurodiversity, and
I love that. A world where everyone feels safe to be themselves. That's a beautiful vision to hold on to. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with this question to ponder. What small step can you take today to create a more inclusive and accepting world for autistic individuals? It could be as simple as educating yourself, challenging a harmful stereotype, or simply offering a kind word to someone who might be feeling different or misunderstood. Remember, even the smallest actions can have a ripple effect, contributing to a more compassionate and equitable world for all. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.